The rain on IV was never gentle. It didn't patter, it didn't caress. It was a metallic hiss, each drop a tiny needle stabbing into exposed skin. The sky was a pale, poisonous green, churning with low clouds that carried static. Even through the reinforced plating of his rebreather mask could smell the ozone. He adjusted the strap on his pack and kept walking. Out here you didn't stop. The settlement lights were just a smear of gold ahead, Sanctuary Post, one of the few human-friendly outposts in this quadrant. Beyond it, the terrain sloped into the hunting territories of the clans, feline-featured aliens with slit-pupil eyes and movements too fast for comfort. Most humans never crossed their paths without a weapon drawn. His rifle was slung across his back, but it wasn't the kind of day he wanted to use it. The first sign something was wrong was the sound. Not the rain, not the faint hum of the outpost's force shields. It was a sound that didn't belong here. A high-pitched, desperate yowl. It was close, sharp, and panicked. His boots splashed through ankle-deep water as he followed it, cutting away from the main path. The yowl turned into a strange, choked sound, half cry, half hiss. And then he saw her. She was pinned in the mud, one leg caught in the jagged clamp of a rusted scavenger trap. She wasn't human, her features were unmistakably. Long feline ears flat against her skull, tail thrashing, pupils narrowed into vertical lines. Mud streaked her silver fur, and she bared her sharp teeth at him. Raised his hands slowly. "Easy, I'm not here to hurt you," she hissed. Her language was a mix of growls and lilting tones. He understood only fragments from his time on-world, but her voice was trembling with more than just anger. "You'll lose the leg if you keep struggling," he said, crouching. "I can get it open." Human, her voice was strained, almost as if saying the word tasted bitter. "Leave, go." He could, should. They had made it clear for years that humans were tolerated at best, despised at worst, but wasn't built for walking away. The trap's mechanism was old, scavenger junk, but its teeth were still sharp, and the mud had sealed it like concrete. He dug his fingers into the slick metal and... The moment the clamp shifted, she gasped, not in pain, but in something else. Her eyes locked on his, wide pupils dilating. For just a heartbeat, the rain seemed quieter. Then her breathing changed. It quickened, became shallow. Her ears twitched violently, tail freezing mid-whip. She looked at him like prey looks at a predator, or like something else entirely. "Your voice," she breathed, barely audible over the rain. "It calls." Froze, he had no idea what that meant, but she looked shaken, not just from the injury, almost startled by herself. "Trap's open," he said quickly, pulling the jaws apart enough for her leg to slip free. She stumbled into him, her weight light but tense, like coiled muscle under fur. He caught her, steadying her without thinking. Her claws pressed against his chest, not quite digging in. She stared at him again, but this time there was no hiss, no growl, just confusion. "You can't be here," she whispered. Lightning flashed above them, turning the world white for an instant. And in that instant, saw movement on the ridge. Dark shapes fast, low to the ground, too many to count. Her ears twitched toward them. Hunters. The word needed no translation. 3 seconds later, the shapes were descending the slope. His rifle was in his hands before he knew it. The girl, still leaning against him, gave a sharp, guttural cry, but the hunters didn't slow. Their eyes glowed faintly in the green gloom, and they moved with terrifying precision. "We can't outrun them," said. She looked at him with something that might have been fear, or trust. "Then speak again," she said quickly, urgently. "Say anything, anything." "What?" "Your voice," she hissed. "It changes me, it will make them stop." Didn't have time to argue. He raised his voice over the rain. "Hey." The hunters froze, mid-step, every single one. They stood perfectly still, ears twitching, heads tilted not toward her but toward him. The girl's grip on him tightened. "I told you," she whispered. The nearest hunter blinked once, then it lowered its weapon. And smiled. The girl stiffened. "No, no, no, no." The smile was not friendly. It was slow, deliberate, a predator's grin. "They've heard you now," she said, voice shaking. "You can't take it back." Lightning flashed again, and saw that every single hunter was now looking at him like he was the prey. The hunters held like statues in the rain. Kept his rifle half raised, unsure what would break first. The sky, his nerve, or whatever strange thread his voice had just knotted through this moment. The girl pressed close, breath quick, claws hovering at his vest without quite touching. Her tail was rigid. Her ears twitched at every drip off the rock. "Talk," she whispered. "Keep talking." "What do I even say?" "Anything, speak like you did." He didn't understand why, but he did it. "My name is I'm a comms tech ex-Navy. I'm not here to fight. I'm trying to get you out of this storm. Okay, can we?" The front hunter relaxed his shoulders. Another lowered a harpoon sling. A third cocked her head as if listening to a distant echo that only she could hear. The girl's eyes widened. "They hear the note." "What note?" "The one in your throat," she swallowed. "The calling." Lightning crawled over the low green clouds like a cracked egg of light. In that flash, studied the hunting party, 8 figures in dark leather and metal, faces painted with ash lines, tails wrapped with bands that clinked softly. Their leader wore a collar worked with tiny glass discs that chimed when he breathed. He spoke first. His voice was a purr that had learned to cut. "Human, you made a sound that is not yours." "Didn't blink, accident." The leader bared small, perfect teeth. "Accident changes law." The girl leaned closer, whispering up to without taking her eyes off the hunters. "Do not argue the word law. It is sacred." "Got it," muttered. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Okay, I'll follow your lead." His injured leg trembled. She squared her shoulders and called out in her own tongue, the syllables sharp, musical, full of edges. The rain seemed to hush around her words. The leader listened, then answered, and for a long minute the hunters and spoke in an exchange of ritual tones that made feel like a child at a cathedral door. Finally the leader faced. "Your voice struck the binding pitch. You called the law of keeper and kept." Her heart recognized it. Flinched. "Do not turn this to shame." His vertical pupils thinned. "I name only what is." Cleared his throat. "What does keeper and kept actually mean?" His ears flattened. "In storm season, when the air is full of iron and fear, we choose a keeper, a voice that cuts through panic. It holds us steady. It tells our bodies what is safe. It is how kits learn not to run off cliffs when thunder hunts." She swallowed. "Your voice matches the pattern," my body answered. A pinprick of panic lit behind his ribs. "So you're bonded to me." Her eyes flicked to him. "It is not a slave bond, it is guidance. Instinct listens, choice remains." Then lower to herself more than to him. "But if the keeper falls silent for long, instinct can spiral. Fever, confusion, dangerous." "Great," said Rain, sliding down his mask. "So I have to keep you alive by podcast." Despite everything, her mouth twitched. "Keep speaking." Gave a tiny flick of fingers and 2 hunters fan left, 2 right. They formed a half circle around and not quite closing the snare. "You will come with us, human," he said. "The matriarch must hear this voice. She will judge law." Weighed options. He could try to sprint for sanctuary post, stupid. He could fire, suicidal. He could talk. So he talked. "I'll go," he said, raising his hands a little. "But she's hurt. That trap chewed her leg. I need time to bandage and stabilize her. If she collapses, the matriarch hears nothing." This seemed to land. His jaw worked, music discs at his collar faintly chiming. He nodded once. "Do it. We move after." Knelt in the mud beside. Up close, he saw the punctures around her calf, the way the fur was slicked with blood and dirty water. He dug a sterile patch pad and a small injector from his kit. "This will sting," he said. "Your voice already did," she muttered, but did not pull away. He laughed under his breath. The tiny injector hissed, pushing anti-shock into muscle. He wrapped the leg with a that tightened and warmed on contact. Breathing eased, ears loosening a fraction. "Keep talking," she whispered again. So he told her about Sanctuary Post, about the ancient relay dish he was trying to coax back to life, about the way the storms here ate radio like candy, about the smell of fresh coffee and recycled air. Her tail settled into a slow, steady sway. The fever sheen in her eyes receded. The hunters remained still, listening. When his voice faltered, they shifted, ears angling as if a string in the air had slackened. "Notice, too. Do not stop," she murmured. "Right," said, and kept his voice moving like a hand held out over cold water. "Back on Titan Station, I learned to tune signal by ear. A house band used to set up on maintenance nights. The drummer could find the pulse in the power lines and build a beat on top of it. Weed." The sky ripped open with a different sound. Not thunder, not rain. A knife of ultrasonic. Every whisker on every face stood out. Hissed, clamping her hands over her ears, pupils blowing wide with pain. The hunters staggered. A few dropped to their knees. His teeth rang, the frequency drilled his skull. He tasted blood. Snarled, voice shredded. W. Warden's siren. Shapes rose on the far ridge, sleek metal pylons unfolding like black flowers, their mouths open to the storm. Through the rain, saw the humans stenciling on their bases, HALDEN Creel Security, a logo like a hooked sun. Oh hell, breathed. His claws tore grooves down the mud. Stop it, the tone, she swallowed hard, eyes unfocused. It is the killing pitch for us, it breaks the keeper bond, it makes us panic, run until we drown. Hunters broke formation, staggering and clawing at the ground like they wanted to burrow into it. One bolted straight into a boulder, shook, tried to run again. His brain felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire. He forced his hands to move, yanking the coil assembly from his rifles, an induction speaker he'd together to throw decoy noises at cats. He ripped a cable free with his teeth and jammed it into the port on his rebreather mask. Cover your ears, he told. She was already curled small, shaking. He pressed the speaker to his throat, thumbed it on, and spoke. Hear me, hear my voice, this is home, this is safe. Storm can't have you. Stay, breathe, you're with me. The speaker amplified and smoothed his words, flattening rough edges, pushing the fundamental frequency of his voice lower, fuller. He tuned it by instinct, nudging the tiny dial, adjusting the resonance until he felt the bones in his chest hum with it. His breath hitched, slowly the tremor eased, her ears unpinned, her eyes found his and locked. The nearest hunter stilled, then another, then himself. The killing siren still wailed, but threaded under it like a steady hand on a frantic heart. Stay, said again, stay with me. They did. The pylons swiveled, the wail cut out. For a second, there was only rain. Then floodlights speared the slope. A troop carrier rose from behind the ridge, rotors chopping the wet air. Creel Security glowed in block letters across its belly. Its side doors slid wide, revealing a row of armored figures with carbines leveled. A loudhailer cracked. This is Prefect Creel, Interim Authority of Sanctuary Grid. The human voiceprint designated caller will surrender immediately. Step forward with hands visible. Feline will lie prone and remain still. Stiffened, they came for you. His throat was raw. He wiped rain from his visor. The name Creel curdled the back of his mouth. Creel ran the supply contract for 5 settlements, and he ran them like a leash, fuel marked up 300%, medicine locked behind security assessments, fines for air misuse. Had seen the numbers. He had spoken up once. The fine had cost him 3 months. Why do they want me? He asked. His tail lashed. To hold your voice, to leash us by it. Glanced at the pylons, black flowers drooling rain. He looked at its bandaged leg and the hunters who had tried to kill him and now watched him as if he were a lighthouse. He could step forward. He could buy these people a reprieve. He could also hand Creel a weapon that would turn every clan into a herd under a whip. The loudhailer barked again. Final warning. Caller steps forward now, or we blanket the slope with pacification gas. Spat, gas kills kits in the hollows. He has done this before. His jaw clenched. Yes. If I keep the tone steady, can you and your hunters move under it? Stay calm, get to cover. She listened, ears flicking, then nodded once. If you speak, I can carry your note to them. We can move. Good, we're leaving. Blinked, you think you can outwalk a sky knife? He pointed his chin at the carrier. No, said, we'll outthink it. He ripped the induction coil free of his rifle completely and yanked a second cable from his pack, jury-rigged from drone parts and an old field amp. He clipped it to the coil, stripped a wire with his teeth, and clamped it to the damp metal plate on his vest. The rebreather hummed as it fed power back into the coil, the amp's tiny lights fighting rain to stay alive. Then he lifted the coil to his mouth and spoke again, slow, steady, a tide that did not hurry. Walk with me. He stepped sideways into a cut of rock and brush. Rose, keeping her shoulder against his. She answered him in short phrases, her voice carrying his tone outward like a lantern passed hand to hand. The closest hunters matched her steps. Farther ones, shuddering and blinking, began to sink. The carrier's floodlights tracked them. Caller, the loudhailer snapped. You are walking toward restricted clan territory. Halt, do not test jurisdiction. Did not halt. The pylons bloomed again, lips opening, thrumming. Faster hissed, they will. The killing siren hit like broken glass. His legs buckled. He shoved the coil against his throat, turned the dial until it burned his skin, and poured his voice into the metal. Stay with me, left foot, right foot, breathe. His claws gripped his vest and held. Her voice braided with his, throwing the pattern wider. Hunters who had lost themselves found it again and moved. They slid along the slope like a single creature with 10 legs, keeping to rock hollows, ducking under growth, disappearing from the carrier's clean angles. The floodlights swung and overshot. Carbines spat warning shots into the mud. Caller, Creel's voice came close, too close. He must have switched to a headset tied to the carrier's external. Don't be a fool, you have no idea what that tone is worth. I can make you very comfortable, or very not. Laughed once, raw and low, been the second for a while. Then listen, I don't need you, I need the voice. If you die, I can still pull it from your throat. Seer snapped back, what? Hissed, they have cut throats before. Rage burned bright enough to chase the storm out of his head. We're moving, he said, and kept them moving. For a moment it worked, stone and brush, tone and step. They became a pattern against the siren, a small living algorithm of survival. Then a hunter ahead of them threw up a hand, cliff. Peered, tail lowering. The way forward ended in a black drop where the hillside sheared away into a gulch full of white water. The path switchbacked far right, and right was where the carrier hovered, rotors grinding wet light into the evening. Back snapped. Gunfire cracked, mud spat inches from his boots. Creel's voice, gas in 5. Looked at the drop, he looked at the carrier. He looked at whose leg was shaking but whose eyes were steady on him. Trust, raw and unguarded. He made a choice. He slipped the coil's strap over his head, settling the humming disc against her throat. You carry the note, he said. If I go quiet, don't stop, keep them calm. Her ears shot up. What are you doing? Arguing with a sky knife. He stepped away from the group, out into the light, hands high, voice booming from the small loudspeaker in his chest. Prefect Creel, he shouted, I'm here. The floodlight snapped to him, carbine swung, gasped, snarled a curse. Took one more step toward the edge of the cliff and spread his arms wider. You want the caller, he yelled. Come get him. The carrier's side door dropped. A figure in glossy armor stood silhouetted, broad, helmeted, his stenciled with Creel over a hooked sun. The loudhailer cut. Creel spoke through his own helmet, voice cold and close. Don't move, boy. Smiled without humor and put his heel half over the drop. Your move, Prefect. The siren rose, the carbines hummed, the rain leaned in. And from the brush behind, wherein the hunters crouched in the dark, the coil its throat flickered and died. The tone vanished. His eyes went wide, pupils swallowing the gold. She whispered, voice breaking, Your voice, it's gone. For a second, the world truly stopped. The rain still fell, the carrier's rotors still thudded overhead, but without tone in the air, the space between each sound felt raw and jagged. His ears jerked, tail snapping in short, frantic arcs. The hunters shifted restlessly, claws flexing against the mud. Their breathing sped up, turning ragged. Instinct was taking over. Stay, tried, her voice cracking against the weight of the panic. She pressed both hands to the coil at her throat, but it was cold and lifeless. A faint whiff of burnt circuitry curled into the rain. She looked up toward, alone in the open, half his heel over the gulch drop, and felt something twist inside her chest. The panic wanted her to bolt. Every muscle screamed to run, but her eyes locked on him instead, fighting that rising chaos. Creel's amplified voice cut the tension. You just threw away your advantage, boy. Now you're just meeting a storm. His jaw flexed. He wasn't sure what had fried the coil, rain, impact, maybe a stray bullet's shock, but his gut told him there wasn't time to fix it. He looked past the glare of the carrier's lights, straight at the silhouette in the doorway. You've been trying to leash these people for years, he said, loud enough for the hunters to hear. The bond isn't yours to take. Creel laughed. The bond is just sound. Sound can be stored. I can take it from you, replicate it, sell it by the crate. You stumbled onto a currency tech. Problem is I don't buy from amateurs. The carbines shifted. Creel took a step toward the open ramp. Behind, bit down on the panic like it was a physical thing. Her leg hurt, her breath stuttered, but she forced herself forward, 2 steps, 3 out of the brush. The hunters hissed warnings, but she ignored them. She called out in her own tongue, voice sharp and commanding. The hunters froze mid-shift, their panic halting for just a beat. "Look at me," she barked to them. "Do not look at the drop, do not look at the sky knife, look at me." Her ears flicked forward. She bared her teeth, not in threat, but in defiance. The matriarch's daughters had drilled that look into her since childhood, the expression you wore when you refused to yield. She felt the panic pull again, but she spoke louder. "You are not prey." The words didn't soothe Like's voice, but they anchored just enough. Creel's helmet tilted toward her. "Well, well, the kept herself, you're coming too." His gauntlet flicked, one of the carbines barked. The shot hit the mud inches from her foot, spraying cold grit over her bandage. Hissed, crouching low. Moved before he thought, stepping fully onto the edge, arms wide again. "You want her, you'll have to fly down into this mess to take her." Creel's voice turned to ice. "Step back from that cliff." Sighs didn't leave him, not a chance. The carrier's rotors roared louder, Creel giving some silent hand signal to his men. And then in the corner of his vision, he saw it, a shimmer along the gulch wall below, almost like heat mirage but denser. A field. The kind he'd seen in old mining rigs, magnetized cable nets for catching falling ore pods. An idea hit him hard and fast, dangerous, stupid, just his kind of thing. He turned his head slightly toward without taking his eyes off Creel. "When I drop, don't freeze. Move them toward the river bend. Use the rocks for cover. Wait for my signal." Her ears flattened. "Drop." But before she could say more, he stepped backward off the cliff. The fall wasn't clean. Wind from the carrier's rotors shoved him sideways. Rain blinded him. But the magnetic net caught him halfway down. It jolted him hard enough to knock the breath out of him. He scrambled, boots finding purchase on the wet cables, fingers gripping a rusted support strut. The net vibrated faintly. The anchor points were old, unmaintained. That was good. That meant breakable. Above, shouts, Creel barking orders, a rope line dropping from the carrier. Yanked his toolkit free with one hand, teeth biting the zipper. He found the thermal cutter, barely charged but maybe enough. He sparked it to life, the arc spitting blue against the rain. Up top saw him start cutting. Realization hit her like a bolt. He wasn't running, he was setting a trap. "Move," she hissed to the hunters, repeating it in their tongue, driving them toward the river bend. "When he calls, we strike." The net cable glowed under the cutter's kiss. Kept working, slicing through strands as the carrier's descent pulled it lower toward the gulch lip. He didn't have long. Creel's men were halfway down their rope, carbines slung for climbing. With a final spark, the main anchor strand gave. The whole section of net sagged violently, enough to tilt the incoming troopers off balance. 2 swung wide, slamming into the cliff wall. Grabbed a loose length of cable, looped it twice around his arm, and jumped. The sudden drop yanked the remaining net free from its anchors. The whole thing collapsed downward, pulling the troopers with it. They tumbled into the white water below, shouts lost in the river's roar. Swung hard, smacking into a ledge before scrambling up toward the gulch rim. His shoulders screamed, his knees jarred, but adrenaline shoved him forward. He crawled over the edge into a crouch, just as the carrier slewed sideways to adjust. Saw him appear. Relief threatened to undo her composure, but then the carrier's side guns started to track toward him. She didn't wait for his signal. She became the signal. Her voice tore through the storm, not soothing, not like his, but fierce enough to make the hunters surge forward. They fanned into the rocks, bounding toward the carrier's exposed flank. Saw it happening and added his own reinforcement. No coil this time, just raw voice at the top of his lungs. "Now." The first hunter reached the carrier's landing strut and leapt, claws sparking on metal. Another followed, ripping at the sensor mounts. Carbines barked, ducked behind a boulder, hissing orders to keep them moving. Sprinted toward her, skidding into cover. "We need to break their flight control. If they can't hover, they can't hold the ridge." She bared her teeth in a grin that was more predator than ally. "Then let's pull their wings." They broke cover together, low and fast, straight toward the carrier's nose where the intake vents gulped rain-heavy air. 2 hunters were already there, prying at a panel. Slid in beside them, slammed his cutter into the vent's grating and jammed it sideways. Sparks flew. The intake screamed in protest. A high-pitched whine came from deep inside the carrier. The hover field wavered. The craft tilted, just enough for the hunters clinging to its side to scramble up and over onto the roof. His tail lashed in satisfaction. They fall now. Inside the cockpit, Creel's voice roared over an open channel. Stabilize, dump ballast, get. Then the carrier's port thruster belched flame and died. The whole craft lurched hard toward the gulch and dove clear as the carrier's pilot fought to lift, but the tilt was too sharp, the rain too heavy. One landing strut clipped the cliff edge. Metal screamed. With a final shudder, the carrier spun away from the ridge and dropped into the green mist below. Silence fell except for the rain. The hunters regrouped around, their breathing heavy but steady. No panic now, just wide eyes on. Stepped forward, ears high. You leapt into the river's mouth and came back with its teeth. Caught his breath, managing a crooked smile. I've been called worse. But's voice cut in, low and wary. Creel is not drowned, his kind floats. His ears flicked. Then we must move before he climbs back up. Nodded, lead the way. They turned toward the deeper territory of the clans. At his side, hunters fanning out. But in the back of his mind, one thought gnawed. If Creel could replicate his voice from a recording, the crash wouldn't stop him. It would just make him angrier. And somewhere, far ahead in the rain, the matriarch was going to want answers about why her daughter had a human keeper. The storm thinned as they moved deeper into territory, but the air was still heavy with the green haze of wet season. Limped at side, the bandage on her leg darkened by rain. Her pace was steady, but every few steps her tail twitched in ways that told she was fighting pain. Led the hunters ahead, scanning the gullies for movement. Even here the hills seemed alive, vine growth hanging like muscle from stone, the occasional flash of insect wings big enough to cast shadows. You've done something dangerous, said quietly, not looking at him. His eyes stayed forward. You mean taking on Creel's carrier? I mean stepping into our law. She glanced at him then, ears angled back. The keeper bond is not casual. In our history, humans have never been the voice. Now that it has happened, it will not go unnoticed. They reached the edge of a plateau, where the land dropped away into a shallow basin. In its center sat the stronghold, an interlocking sprawl of low stone halls and sloped roofs, all built around a central tower that looked like the fang of some buried beast. Smoke curled from vents along the tower's side, and the air shimmered with heat from hidden vents, geothermal guessed. Two guards in scaled armor waited at the outer path. Their eyes narrowed when they saw him. Spoke to them in clipped phrases. The guards' ears flicked toward then back to. After a tense pause, they stepped aside. Inside, the stronghold smelled of and something sharp, like citrus and metal. The main hall was lit by braziers that hissed when the rain dripped into them from overhead vents. Of all sizes moved along the edges of the chamber, whispering and watching. At the far end sat the matriarch. Her fur was black streaked with silver, her eyes molten gold. She wore a mantle of woven glass beads that caught the firelight in tiny rainbow shards. Despite her seated posture, she radiated a presence that made spine straighten without thinking. Went to one knee, mother. The matriarch's gaze slid to, stand human. Obeyed, the sound of the rain beyond the hall suddenly louder in his ears. You bring my daughter limping, she said. You bring my hunters without their quarry. You bring a voice that rings in my bones like the turning of a season. Stepped forward, matriarch he. Her hand lifted, silencing him. You will speak when I ask. Her eyes fixed on again. You are called. A comms engineer. A maker of voices, her head tilted. And yet the one you made tonight was not made, it was born. Do you know what you carry? Hesitated. I know it can keep your people steady under pressure, and I know Creel wants it bad enough to kill for it. At the name, her ears stiffened. Creel has been bleeding us for 5 cycles. Fuel, medicine, clean water, everything comes at a price only the desperate will pay. He has weapons that silence us, scatter us. And now, she leaned forward slightly, now he will have heard a tone that cuts through his silencing. Whispers rippled through the hall. Some glanced at, others narrowed their eyes at. He will not stop, the matriarch continued. He will follow that sound. If you stay, you bring danger to this place. If you leave, you lead him away, perhaps to die. Either choice has cost. His tail lashed once. Mother, he saved me from a scavenger trap. He shielded our hunters from the killing pitch. He leapt into the river's mouth to break Creel's wing. Without him, we would have lost more tonight. A muscle flicked in the matriarch's jaw, and yet your body answered him. His ears went flat. It is instinct, I did not choose it. Instinct shapes choice, the matriarch said softly, but the edge in her voice was sharp enough to cut. Stepped in before could answer. You're worried I'm a risk. You're right, but Creel already knows I exist. The safest option for you is also the one that's going to keep him from weaponizing this voice. Take the fight to him before he can record or copy it. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. You would go to war for us. I'd go to war to stop Creel from leashing anyone with this. The hall was silent for a heartbeat, save for the slow hiss of the braziers. Finally, the matriarch spoke. If you mean this, then you must first prove the voice is not a trick. We will take you into the deep caverns. There, the storms echo in stone. If your voice can cut the panic there, then it can cut it anywhere. His ears twitched sharply. Mother, the caverns are dangerous, the matriarch finished. Yes, that is the point. Glanced at, her expression was a mix of worry and something else, something almost like pride. When do we leave? He asked. The matriarch's teeth showed in a slow, deliberate smile. Dawn. That night was given a small alcove in the guest quarters. Bare stone, a mat, and a bowl of something warm that tasted faintly like spiced broth and lime. Came to check his bandages, but ended up sitting across from him, tail curled around her ankles. You don't have to do this, she said finally. Yes, I do, said. If your people believe in the voice, then they'll fight beside me against Creel. If they don't, then I'm just another outsider making noise. His gaze searched his face. In the caverns, the storms are not just sound. They're alive in a way. They push into your mind. They find your fears. Then I guess I'll find out what mine are, said. She gave a short, quiet laugh. You're either the bravest human I've met, or the... Probably both. Before she left, she paused in the doorway. In the morning, when it starts, don't look for me. Just keep speaking. I'll be listening. When the door closed, lay back on the mat, staring at the curved stone ceiling. Somewhere beyond it, the storm rumbled like a patient predator. And in the darkness, he realized Creel wouldn't just wait for him to fail the matriarch's test. He'd move to make sure of it. Dawn on IV didn't come with sunlight. It came with a shift in the rain's rhythm, a low hum in the air, and the pale green gloom turning slightly less dark. Stood at the edge of the stronghold's plateau, pack slung over his shoulder, rifle strapped tight across his back. Was there too, already speaking in low tones with and two other hunters who would guide them to the caverns. The matriarch appeared without ceremony, her black and silver fur shimmering with mist. The path is not long, she said, but it is steep, and once you enter, you will not leave until the storm there accepts you or consumes you. His tail flicked. He's ready. Wasn't sure he was, but he nodded anyway. Let's go. They left the stronghold and took a winding trail down into the basin, then across a jagged stretch of broken rock where the ground steamed in places from vents below. His boots slid more than once, was there each time, steadying him with quick, sure hands despite her limp. By they reached the cavern's mouth, a crack in the base of a cliff, wide enough for two to walk abreast. The air that flowed out was warm and carried the faint scent of copper. Inside, it was darker than night. The hunters lit narrow glow sticks, their greenish light barely enough to paint the slick walls. The hum started almost immediately. It wasn't just sound. It was vibration deep in the bone, as if the stone itself was speaking in a language of pressure and pulse. They descended deeper, the tunnel widening into a chamber where stalactites hung like the teeth of some colossal beast. The hum rose and fell, shifting pitch in ways that prickled the back of his neck. This is the outer chamber, said softly. The deeper you go, the more the storm finds you. It will try to unmake your thoughts. Sounds like Creel's speeches, muttered. A faint smile flickered on her lips, then vanished. When it begins, you will speak. Keep the tone steady. No matter what you see, no matter what you feel, do not stop. He nodded, got it. They went deeper. The hum became a roar, though no air moved. Skin crawled. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, and shapes swam in the edges of his vision, shapes that weren't there when he turned his head. By the time they reached the central cavern, his teeth were buzzing. The chamber was huge, lit only by faint bioluminescent streaks in the walls. Pools of water lay scattered across the floor, their surfaces trembling with every note of the storm. "This is where you stand," said, pointing to a flat slab at the chamber's heart. "The rest of us will stay at the edges. If you fail, we will pull you out if we can." Climbed onto the slab. The hum deepened. No, not a hum now, but a voice, layered and ancient, speaking in tones he didn't know but somehow understood in his chest. It was anger. It was challenge. Stepped close enough that her shoulder almost brushed his. "Start now." He closed his eyes, took a breath, and let his voice roll out. Low, steady, pulling from the same place he'd used to keep her calm in the storm. He shaped it, held it, feeling it vibrate in the air like a line drawn between them. At first it was almost easy. The tone felt right, anchoring him. Then the storm began to answer. It came as memories at first, small, ordinary ones, a warm cup of coffee on Titan Station, the hum of an old guitar amp, a laugh from someone he'd lost years ago. The storm twisted them. The coffee soured in his mouth, the guitar string snapped, the laugh turned into a scream. His tone wavered. From the edge of the slab's voice cut in, "Stay with me, I am here." He tightened his jaw and pushed the sound back into place. The storm pressed harder. Now the visions were sharper. He was back in the Navy, comms deck flashing red. He was watching a hull breach on the feed. He was hearing orders to seal the bay even though there were still people inside. The old guilt came crawling up his spine, whispering you could have saved them. The tone faltered again, just for a second, but's voice rose to meet it, weaving through his like a second thread. He matched her, locked onto that shared rhythm, and the guilt eased enough to breathe. But then another voice, not the storm. A crackle in his ear, sharp and metallic. "You're wasting your breath, Tech." "Creel." His eyes snapped open, scanning the cavern edges. The hunters were still there, too. None of them had spoken. "You think you're impressing her?" Creel's voice was smug, too close. "You're just a tool. When I'm done with you, I'll strip your voice print and toss you in the gulch with the rest." Grit his teeth. "You're not here. I'm everywhere this rock can carry a signal, and right now, I'm in her ear too." Flinched as if she'd heard something. Her eyes found his, wide and unsure. As she whispered, the tone wavered again, and the storm pounced on the weakness. The hum spiked into a scream, the walls seeming to lunge inward, the pools boiling without heat. He almost lost it, almost. But then stepped closer, so close her claws grazed his sleeve. "I'm still here," she said. He found her eyes through the green haze and let everything else fall away. The storm, the visions, even Creel's voice, it all became background. He built the tone again, deeper now, and she matched him. Two voices against the storm. The pressure eased, the pools stilled, the walls stopped poolsing. And then silence. For a moment thought he'd gone deaf, but then he realized the storm had stopped. Smiled slow and fierce. "You've done it." His voice came from the shadows. "The caverns accept you." But before relief could settle, a faint echo reached, ears, a real one this time from outside the caverns. "Rotor blades." Creel hadn't waited for the trial to end. The sound of rotor blades grew louder, a low thump that rattled loose stones from the cavern ceiling. The hunters at the edges of the chamber stiffened, ears snapping toward the entrance. His tail lashed once. "They wouldn't dare," she said, but her voice carried no certainty. His answer was grim. Creel would dare anything, even here. Stepped down from the slab, heart still pounding from the trial. "If he's coming for me. You don't have to." His eyes flashed. "This is sacred ground. If he spills blood here, he declares war on the entire clans. You think we will simply let that pass?" A deep, metallic voice boomed down the tunnel from the entrance. "Caller." It was Creel. No loudhailer this time. His voice carried through powered amplifiers woven into his armor. It was sharp enough to make the cavern walls hum faintly in answer. "You've had your fun," Creel called. "Now you walk out, alone. Do that, and maybe I leave your little furred friends breathing." The matriarch's daughter stood taller, claws flexing at her sides. "If he enters, we strike." "Look too, what does he truly want?" The voice. "Yes," said, "and not just mine, he wants to own it. If he gets it, he can leash entire clans." Bared his teeth, then he leaves with nothing. The first of Creel's troops appeared in the tunnel, heavily armored, visors glowing faint blue, rifles sweeping the chamber. They moved with precision, covering each other's angles, shields forward. Hissed under her breath, "Security elites, he's serious." His mind raced. In this chamber, firefight echoes would be chaos. One stray shot could ricochet into anyone. They couldn't just charge. "Light," he murmured. "We use light." The walls' bioluminescence barely glowed, but remembered how it had shifted when the storm's hum intensified. He knelt by one of the glowing streaks, pulled a small resonator from his pack, a repair tool for tuning antenna coils, and pressed it to the rock. A low vibration shivered through the stone, and the streak's glow swelled brighter. Crouched beside him, "What are you?" "Signal amplification," he said. "Same principle as boosting a comms relay, only here the stone's the emitter." He turned the resonator's dial, and the glow surged. The light spilled across the chamber, reflecting in the pools and doubling back until the air shimmered with green-gold radiance. The first wave of Creel's troops hesitated, visors flaring white in the sudden brightness. Didn't waste the moment. "Strike." The hunters moved as one, slipping into the overbright reflections, vanishing into the glare. They reappeared at the edges of the troops, claws tearing at joints in the armor, tails snapping like whips. Creel's amplified voice barked orders. "Shields up, flank them, secure the caller alive." Stayed low, adjusting the resonator's frequency. The glow began to pulse now, bright, dim, bright, just enough to make moving shadows dance across the walls. To the human eye it was disorienting, it was cover. Dropped into the fight, her injured leg slowing her only slightly. She slid under a soldier's swing, drove claws into the back of his knee joint, and used his stumble to spring up and rake his visor. The glass spiderwebbed. The soldier fell back with a shout. More troops poured in. The cavern filled with weapons fire and the hiss of claws on armor, ducked behind a stalagmite as a burst chewed through the rock above his head. Then another voice, close and raw. He turned. Creel was there, stepping into the glow, his armor matte black helmet open to show a weather-beaten face. His eyes were cold steel. "You're coming with me," Creel said simply. Shook his head. "Not a chance." Creel moved fast for his size, closing the distance in 3 strides. His gauntlet shot out, catching by the vest and hauling him upright. "Don't be stupid. You have no idea what your voice could do. You think you're saving them, you could rule them." Wrenched against his grip. "That's the difference between us. I don't want to." Creel's lip curled. "Then you're wasting the most valuable resource on this rock." A blur of silver hit them both, tackling Creel's side. The 3 of them crashed into the edge of the slab. Creel stumbled but didn't fall. He backhanded her away with a force that made stomach twist. She hit the ground hard, ears flat, breath ragged. Lunged, ramming his shoulder into Creel's. The bigger man staggered, boots scraping against the stone. "You can't protect them forever," Creel snarled. "You'll sleep, you'll get careless, and when you do, I'll take that voice from your dead throat." His jaw tightened. "Then I guess I just won't sleep." A sudden tremor rolled through the cavern, low and deep. The pools rippled. The glowing streaks along the walls flared, then darkened. Sighs widened. "The storm, it's coming back." His voice rose over the din. "Out, everyone out." But the tunnel was still blocked by Creel's troops, and the glow was fading fast. Creel's grin was sharp. "Let's see if you can keep them calm and alive in the dark." Looked at her pupils blown wide, breath quickening. Around them, hunters twitched and shifted, panic rising with the storm's first note. If he didn't anchor them in the next 10 seconds, the sacred chamber would turn into a killing ground of instinct and confusion. He stepped up onto the slab again, drew in a breath, and let the tone pour out. No coil, no tech, just raw voice against the storm and the chaos. The first note cut through the cavern like a line of steel. His ears snapped toward him, froze mid-swipe, his claws halting inches from an enemy's visor. Even Creel's troops hesitated, eyes darting toward the human on the slab. But Creel didn't stop moving. He began climbing the slab toward, the storm's wind catching the edge of his armor. "You can't hold it and fight me," Creel said, voice low now, almost intimate under the roar. "One or the other, choose." Kept the tone steady, but his eyes locked on Creel's. "I choose both." He took one step forward on the slab as the storm surged, and the whole cavern seemed to tilt. The tilt was not real, not in the ground, but in the senses. The storm in the caverns had woken fully now, pressing on every nerve, bending sight and sound until up and down meant nothing. His boots gripped the slick stone of the slab. His voice rolled out into the chaos, low and constant, threading through the rising hum like a steel cable through a flood. Around him, hunters clung to that sound, tails rigid, claws digging into stone, but their eyes stayed locked on him. If the tone broke, instinct would take them, and Creel knew it. The prefect came up the slab like a predator, one slow step at a time, his grin tight against the howl of the storm. "Can't fight me and sing, boy," Creel growled. "Drop one and the other kills you." His throat burned already. The air here was heavy, almost liquid with vibration. Every note cost effort he didn't have to spare. But he'd done this before in a different way. Navy days, holding a channel open on a battered comms rig while scrambling to rewire power feeds under fire. Voice steady while hands worked. So he let his body remember. He shifted his stance, let the tone vibrate from his chest instead of his throat, freeing his jaw. His left hand stayed loose at his side, but his right slid to the magnetic latch on his vest. Creel lunged, twisted aside, using the slab's slickness to slide past him. His tone dipped for half a heartbeat, but's voice rose from below, matching him, catching the thread until he locked back on. Her eyes met his for a flash. "I've got you." Creel spun, gauntlet snapping out, caught the wrist, shoved it sideways, and drove his elbow into the gap under the arm plate. The prefect grunted but didn't break stride. "Stubborn little bastard," Creel spat. "You have no idea," rasped, still keeping the tone alive under the words. Below, the hunters moved like a single organism now, their panic replaced by focus. Stood at their center, her own voice braided into in a fierce counterpoint. The combined sound filled the chamber, pushing the storm's howl back to the edges. The pool stilled. The bioluminescent streaks flickered back to life. Creel faltered for a fraction of a second, just long enough for to hook his boot behind the man's ankle and shove. The prefect staggered, boots skidding on the wet stone. He caught himself, but not before tore the power module from the small amplifier built into Creel's and hurled it into one of the pools below. It sank with a hiss, green light flashing briefly underwater. Creel roared, lunging again, but this time the storm favored. The vibrations rolled with his tone, the slab almost seeming to steady under him. He stepped forward, voice dropping lower, fuller, until it resonated in the stone itself. Creel froze, not because he wanted to, but because his body had just been caught by the same instinct that bound the... For the first time, the prefect's eyes showed something other than cold certainty. "You," he began. Cut him off, voice ringing through the chamber. "You leave, now, or I carry this voice to every clan on and they will never hear your orders again." The hunters hissed approval, their claws drumming against stone in a rhythm older than the stronghold. His voice climbed with his, sharp and certain. Creel's jaw tightened. He glanced at the hunters closing in around the base of the slab, then back at. "This isn't over," he said. His tone didn't waver. "It is for today." The prefect backed down, step by step, until he reached the edge of the chamber. His remaining troops fell in around him, dragging the wounded. They disappeared into the tunnel, rotor blades fatting into the storm outside. When the sound was gone, let the tone ease, then fade. His knees buckled, and he dropped to one hand on the slab, breath rasping in his ears. Was there in moments, steadying him with an arm around his back. "You did it," she said softly. He shook his head. "We did it." Approached, his usual scowl softened. "The clans will hear of this. The keeper bond stands, and Creel will find no safe path here again." The matriarch's voice carried from the chamber entrance, calm but edged with pride. "You faced the storm, the prefect, and your own fear. My daughter still stands because of you. You have my thanks and my protection." Met her gaze. "I didn't come here for thanks. I came to make sure no one could use this against you." "Then you will stay," she said simply, "until that danger is gone." Later, as they walked back toward the stronghold, the rain outside lighter now, glanced at him. "You could have left when you had the chance," she said. "Why didn't you?" Smiled faintly, "Because someone has to keep talking." Her tail brushed his leg as they walked. "Then I'll keep listening." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet stone and from the stronghold ahead. Somewhere behind them, the caverns hummed again, but this time it was only an echo of the tone they'd set together. And in that echo, was a promise neither of them needed to speak aloud.